Hey, friends, this is Aaron Summers, and welcome to the Church Brain Podcast, where each week we help church leaders think clearly in seasons of stress and transition. Now, this week in the briefing, we talked about a moment that I think every leader faces, whether they might admit it or not. I've faced it. Um, it's the moment when you start wondering, did I hear God right? Am I really called to this thing? Well, today I am joined by David Foster, and we together today want to help you rebuild that confidence without making reactive kinds of decisions. David, welcome to the podcast today.
Yeah, brother. Happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about what you do with Texas Baptist. You've got a good niche that you're working with, and I just enjoy seeing what you're doing.
Yeah, man. So I help lead the Pastor's Common, which is essentially just a young pastor space to become the best version of yourself. So we help guys in their preaching, leading, all kinds of stuff. And, if we don't know the answer, then we try and get people that do know the answer connected with these guys and everything like that. But if I'm completely honest, most of what I do at Texas Baptist is I just bang my head against the wall. So, yeah.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Man.
I'm sure that I know the leaders I deal with and the leaders that you deal with. Um, we often can start questioning our calling when we're at our low points. It's not necessarily when we're in the difficulty. Sometimes it's after the difficulty. I know for me, I'd come through a hard season at a church and I just began thinking. I knew that my time at that church was coming to an end, and I had in my mind I was called to pastor. But in difficult seasons, you start to ask yourself, um, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? So I investigated taking a second chair at a larger church. A buddy of mine was the pastor, and I interviewed for that. But he and I had a conversation. He said, Aaron, I don't know. I don't know if you will like doing this. Can you come out of the pastorate as first chair leadership and step into second chair leadership and only preach once a year? And I'm like, that's a fair question. I even investigated, at the same time, this whole moment of introspection and reflection and investigation. God, do I need to go back into the business world? Do I need to go get my MBA and just go back into the business world and just be a good supporter of the pastor whose church I attend? That was just some questions that I ultimately, God, brought me back, and I just came back into a sense of the calling that I had, and it was 15 more years before I started this position, which was an adjustment, but I felt God leading me into that adjustment. I just wonder, have you ever experienced a time of just maybe deep introspection or reflection? God, what is it that you have for me? What about your experiences with that?
Yeah, man. I mean, I guess the elephant in the room is that I think everyone in ministry, if we're honest, we all felt that in 2020 or 2021, trying to come.
Yes.
I mean, we were having to use or develop on the fly leadership skills that we honestly didn't have. And trying to think through things we never had to think through. And so I think that's going to be the last time where I was kind of like, oh man. But then, I think, I'd be interested to know what's the average age where a guy or girl in ministry kind of has that moment where it's like, man, this is a long, hard, rough season. Am I called to do this? Toward the point where you're looking at the classified, you're looking at job boards or whatever. It was, 2020, 2021, really all the way through 2023 for me is a 3-year
Mhm.
stretch. There you go.
Mhm.
3-year stretch. The church I was at, I think at that point we had 4 different leadership transitions in, in 6
Yeah.
years. And
Mm.
so, me being the longest tenured, and I'm pretty personable, and so guys and girls in the church kind of like, okay, well, you're the de facto leader, and so there's just a lot of weight on me, and I
Mhm.
just ran myself way too hard, man. Um, didn't take care of myself. Um, you know, I got to a point where maybe we'll hit this, but like we can we can spiritualize how burnt out we are at times.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
this badge I have because I worked so hard for the Lord, whatever, all this other stuff.
Right. Right.
Really, I feel like the Lord's kind of saying, like, man, you actually think I need you to do this stuff. Like I'm going to accomplish it.
It's you're not old enough to remember this, but it's that modern day Sunday school award things, badges that you'd hand out for perfect attendance. We
Are
as
you
pastors
saying
have those things.
badges? No
Oh yeah,
way.
oh yeah.
Oh,
Every
shoot.
year at the end of the church year, if you had perfect attendance at Sunday school, you got a little thing, and you could like have it on like a sash or something that you could like post them on, like GA and RA and Boy Scout and Girl Scout sashes where you put all the perfect attendance banners.
Man, that's
And they
wild.
used to hand those out every year, man. And we pastors kind of have that. It's like, tough season, hard
Yep.
church. I
Yep.
survived,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, yeah. One of my professors always used to say, like, "Hey, man, I've been in ministry for 40 years, and I got the scars to prove it." And he would pull his,
Hmm.
as if like there's actual scars.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, yeah, I mean, I get it. But yeah, that 3-year stretch for me, absolutely tough. I mean, that's when I had
Yeah.
my first panic attack, then my second and third.
Hmm.
You're just kind of like, what's going
Ministry
on?
has a way.
Yeah, man. And so, that was a tough stretch for me, man. Don't I, I think we should be doing things in this whatever decade of life that you're in. You should be doing things that are going to help you in the next decade, not impede you. I was
Yep.
definitely the latter, man. I was like, now I can run harder than anybody, and then that's just not the case, man. So
Right. Well, you asked a really solid question there. At what point does this happen? And you just celebrate a birthday, but you haven't
Mhm.
yet entered the 40s.
Right, right,
And I,
right.
we over the years we've heard about this midlife crisis
Yeah.
concept, and from my dad's generation, that usually hit 40 to 43. But
Mm,
I think in our generation, in my generation, it's closer to 46 to 50.
okay.
And so what I think happens is we get to that quote unquote midlife moment, and we've got enough years behind us, but just enough years ahead of us that we start asking the question, is what I'm doing, is it fulfilling? And is it making an impact? Am I leaving a legacy? And what
Yeah.
legacy am I leaving? And so I think we begin in our 40s, somewhere there, we begin as men especially, we begin asking those questions. You know,
Mm,
can I do this 20 more years? Can I do it 20 more years? I've been
yeah.
doing it 20, 25 years. Can I do it 20, 25 more? Do I want to do it 2020? And so we just have all of these issues. And I think at each one of those moments, the devil just like steps in and he says,
Mhm.
I'll have that conversation with you. And, what I hope today is these three things that I want us to talk about help to shore that up and help to prevent maybe some of these very detrimental conversations that we have with ourselves. Um,
That's
and
so
behind
good.
all that, behind all that is um, I read First Kings 19. Of course, this is the famous Elijah passage. He's just come off Mount Carmel, and he's been at the top end of this chapter. You've got Jezebel going, "I'm gonna kill you." This is
Yep.
the dude that just saw 400 Baal prophets like smoked,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And And this queen says, "You're dead, I'll have your head."
Yep.
And in that moment, he runs. The Bible says he's full of fear and he runs. And so the first thing that I come out of this with is when we are in these moments of difficulty, don't make directional kinds, life changing decisions when you're emotionally fatigued.
Yeah. I think
Um,
we we give too much authority to some of our lowest moments in ministry.
mhm, absolutely. That's a good word.
And I just don't think we should allow a hard week or a hard month or a hard season to kind of rewrite our calling, you know?
I was always told don't quit on a Monday.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good, man.
You,
That's
you
good.
know,
Yeah. I mean, you brought up First Kings, it's First Kings 18:19. Yeah, it's just it's wild, right? It's talk about a mountaintop experience, literally mountaintop experience.
literally,
Yeah. And then you're like, man, and after that mountaintop experience, the dude asked to die. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah. Just kill me
that's
now.
just
Just kill me now.
it's so wild. Like here's this victory, but it ended up being a low moment for him. Um so I mean maybe the lesson in that is your lowest moment can always follow a victory. I don't know. Hmm.
I think you see that a lot.
Yeah.
I think you've got this moment, the high moment to the low moment. You've got David earlier, high moment of Goliath, low moment getting spears thrown at him by the
Mm.
king. You've got Jesus, this high moment of the Lord's Supper. Boom, now you're being betrayed the same night. I mean, it's highest to
Yeah.
lowest.
That's so good.
We're tired, we're discouraged, we feel pressure. I mean, I know the guys I work with, I see that a lot. I'm sure the pastors in your sphere mean tired,
Mm.
discouraged, pressure, you know.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
happens? We assume something's wrong with the
Mhm.
calling,
Uh-huh.
and there may not be anything wrong with the calling.
Nah, I agree. Nothing wrong with the calling. Um, I think those those hard seasons, where it has like, hey, don't quit on a Monday type stuff. Um,
Yeah,
you know, at what point do you discern that, man, I just need some rest. I just need
right,
rejuvenation. I'm just exhausted right now. Temporarily
right.
exhausted. That's the deal.
So
Yeah.
so for our listeners, what do we do with that? We've come to, this moment. Maybe we're listening to this podcast. Maybe it's a Monday when you're listening to it, or
Mm.
a Friday after the end of a long week. Um, one of the
Or maybe
things that I'm
each week, right? And you're
yeah,
freaking
yeah,
out
yeah,
about
every week. Yeah, yeah, every week. And they
yeah,
might need to come back and listen to this every week for a while,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Don't make a major leadership decision.
Mm,
Delay that.
mhm.
Delay the major leadership decision a week, 2 weeks. I mean, unless it's like the roof is caving in,
Yeah,
don't make that. In COVID, you brought that up. In COVID, we didn't have a choice. Everything was a crisis, and
yeah,
we had crisis management. But we're not in a crisis management like that anymore. So we need to make sure we're not leading out of fatigue.
yeah.
And so if it's not urgent and you recognize that you're in that moment, man, try to push that off a week or two.
Is
Um,
yeah. I mean, decision fatigue's a real thing. Pushing it off. I could see some guys kind of being like, man, like I don't want to avoid it. And it's just kind of like
sure.
you're not avoiding it, man. Like
Mm-mm.
you're trying to put yourself in the best situation and headspace so you can make an informed decision. So I
Yeah,
wonder at what point do you reach out to maybe is another step reaching out to a trusted voice advisor or something like that?
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe that person that's your mentor or you trust really well,
Mm,
you say, I'm not at my best right now. Can you
mm,
help me think clearly through this?
mm.
Can you help me? Is this a decision I have to make now or later? And unfortunately, our spouses may be just as fatigued as we are, and they're not the voice that needs to
Don't ask
talk
the
about
water.
this.
Yeah. I mean, she's not called to that role, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Not only is she not called, she has been with you through all of this and is just as worn down as you are with it, if not
mm,
more, in a
yeah,
way.
agreed.
Um, you got to find somebody that's outside of the situation that can help you think clearly through it,
Could
because you don't want to make a decision now and have to like undo it later to make it again just because you made a bad one.
would you advise guys to not ask a fellow team member? I mean, that's iffy, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
iffy.
no, that
I
is
mean,
because it to me it depends. I mean, maybe this is something that's in you.
mhm,
And if they're a trusted team member, but this is not in the, they're not dealing with the stuff you're dealing with, maybe you can.
mm,
But I just think that you got to get somebody outside of the situation.
I yeah, I agree.
Um,
I agree. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I agree with
So
that.
delay the decisions when you can. And
Mhm,
I think your point is right. Some guys are going to think, well, but that's my responsibility. I got to make these decisions.
mhm, mhm.
You do, but you are also called to make the decisions when you're at your best, not your worst.
That's right. Yeah,
So,
yeah. No, that's good.
so,
I
so
feel like
yeah.
go ahead, and I'm gonna come back to this because I think it ties in.
So when you walk through what you see happening with Elijah here,
Mhm,
don't make these kind of decisions when you're at your worst. But the cool thing that I see here is how God responds to Elijah,
mhm,
which leads us to another thing that we need to do to help bring our clarity and confidence back. You've got to get food, rest, and time in you. You've got to
amen,
restore that physical and emotional
amen,
capacity. And I love this because how many of us, if we'd have seen a junior team member,
mm,
that's
mm,
like God to Elijah, if we'd have seen a junior team member deal with it this way and run away, would have come and said, "Bro, what are you doing? What are
yeah,
you up to?" Now, I hope that I would have enough EQ to know that that's not how to handle that. But I also know that in my younger days, I may not have handled it that well. But what does God do? The angel comes and touches him and gives him food.
that's
Then he
it.
comes and gives him more food. I mean, I think there's a real thing here that we miss. We
Yeah,
talk about, oh, well, God provided. Look what God provided. Sometimes when we're burned up or burned out or we're just tired or it's a hard season, you
mm,
need food, rest, and time
yeah, that's good, man.
before you make those decisions and before you decide this isn't for me or my calling is wrong. You eat, sleep, and give yourself some space. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think, at least here in the West, I think we tend to, as leaders, we if we're burnout, and who knows what the reason is, maybe we can dig into that. But as far as if you're burnt out, you need to identify the reason why you're burnt out.
Right, right.
But we tend to want the answer, or in our case, a lot of times, man, we just want a message. You know what I'm saying? Like, God, give me a message on how to get out of the something like that. And God gave Elijah a meal, not a message. You know,
That's right. That's right.
um, gave him a meal, gave him a nap, um, and I just, I feel like, man, when you're nearing burnout, you're
Yeah,
probably already there, and everything feels like it's a bad calling at that point. You know?
absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's just like, no, man, it's not the calling. It is just a season, but did you put yourself in in this season? You know what I'm saying? Um,
Sure. Sure.
so so I don't know, man. Like, I mean, what you're saying is spot on. I mean, I do a reset. Like, take some notes from Elijah. Just like, let me take a break. Let me eat. Let me sleep. Let me step away and just be with God. I also think this is an opportunity for churches to understand their pastor too. And
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
we have to we have to give him space. Unfortunately, the reality is most churches be like, "This is what we pay you to do, though, pastor."
Sure.
So
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I discovered in the rhythm of the year that I would lead my staff and say, "Look, okay, January was always a slow month. It was a slow month financially, but it was also just a slow month. We didn't naturally have a lot of things on the calendar in January. And you talked about this in the West. What's our thinking? Just let's add something. Let's keep the momentum going. And I
Uh-huh.
said, no, we need to clear January. You just came through October, November, and December. Not only you as a minister, but as a church. And I said, and I would tell them, look, January, we clear the calendar, and we have to take that reset. Same thing would happen around as school was starting. I would
Uh-huh.
say September needs to be a reset month in some ways. We need to not
Yep.
just throw stuff in the calendar,
That's right. That's right.
because when our body's depleted, then our mind is going to follow. And when our mind is
Mm,
clouded, our
uh,
discernment's going to weaken.
that's right, dude.
So if we just keep throwing stuff in the calendar, we're not
Mm,
giving ourselves an opportunity for Sabbath.
uh-huh.
Now, God put it in a weekly situation, and I get that, and we need to be having that. But I think even from a seasonal perspective, we need to be looking at how do we Sabbath as a church. And I
Uh,
think, this rhythm of when is it slow, let it be slow.
yeah. Yeah. And, I think that's the best way to love your people too. Like you brought up a calendar, you're looking at September, August, September, you throw too many things on the calendar for the church, we forget that, especially for young parents or just parents in general, August,
Yeah.
September is super busy for them too with school stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I just wouldn't
Don't
want
add
to,
more stuff at church.
yeah, on a practical side, I'm right there with you, man. Did you ever take or have you ever coached anybody to take like let's call it like a no decision day? Hey, man, like once a week, you're not making any decisions, you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's once a month. Maybe once a week's too much, impractical, maybe. But
Right.
I don't know. I just thought
No,
about
I
that.
I think that's good. No, I think that's good. I think if our listeners are at this moment in their life where they're feeling depleted, they're questioning their call, then I would 100% say you need to block a whole day of no decisions. You
Hmm.
you need you need to make a whole day. There's no strategy, there's no meetings, there's no problem solving.
You're not prepping a
If you
sermon.
can't no, if you can't take a whole day for whatever reason, take a half day.
Yeah.
But put that on the calendar.
Hmm.
Because if you don't schedule it, it's not going to happen.
That's right.
You know.
Yeah. That's good.
Uh, and it's funny, but eat well,
Mm,
sleep late, take a walk in the woods, or for me, take a walk on a golf course with some
yeah.
clubs, But
Yeah.
some guys need to grab a fishing pole and go to a pond and just sit there all day.
That's true.
And, and just what energizes you, not from a personality perspective, but what is a refreshing, restabilizing thing. If that's sitting with a pole in your hand, or if that's going golfing, or literally if it's just I need to drive to another town and just walk the river. I don't
Mm,
know, just find something. Um, you know,
mm,
you can jump on this if you want, or we'll move on. I've done it, and I see you and Deb doing this. You guys go eat well a lot,
yeah.
and I do too. And my wife and I looked at that as this is our time. We didn't talk about kids. We didn't talk about church. We didn't talk. We talked about us. We talked about our life. I think the younger generation talk about being present.
Yeah.
We were just present in the moment. We just responded as the moment brought it. We didn't necessarily have an agenda. Talk to me
Yeah.
about that. What do y'all do?
Um, yeah, we did that because, if I feel like I'm knocking the West. Like I love it here in the West, man. But like
Well, sure,
we live
but
in
it
a
comes
cult,
with its issues.
right? We live in a culture that is addicted to progress and allergic to presence. And
Yep.
so if
Ooh, I
I'm,
like that.
so we need to, me and my wife, man, I mean, we looked at our schedule, like she's off on Fridays. I have to work half a day. And so, I end the work week, man, we're like, we're going to go, Just spend some time eating some good food, like you said, man. Like, where's the best sandwich shop in Dallas? Where's the best barbecue? That type of stuff. And you know, I wish, if I was honest, man, like I can't say that we're not talking church, we're not talking work or anything like that. But honestly, with two young kids, that's really the only time we get to talk about that stuff.
Oh, well, yeah, yeah,
Some of the stuff we talk about, can't be, we shouldn't say around kids. You know what I'm saying? Like and we
yep,
don't want to talk work around them. We don't want to skew their
right,
view of it. Um,
exactly.
and so we're talking to them about their day and all that other stuff. But yeah, man. So that's kind of what works for us.
Absolutely. And I think the minister listening to this podcast, you got to figure out what works for you. You
Yeah,
know, maybe, for some guys it's go work in the flower bed, go mow your yard.
agreed.
Some of them hate doing that. I enjoy getting out and doing that because it's the moment where, if I'm being 100% honest, I grew up in Tennessee and Kentucky. I'll go out,
Yeah,
I'll put my headphones on, I'll put on Gold City, which is old school Southern gospel. I'll
yeah,
put that on and I'll mow my yard, or I'll go out in my patio and I'll like do some woodworking. Some guys
yeah,
would be like, "Why do you want to remodel your kitchen?" I don't know. One, my wife wants me to, but number two,
yeah,
I can go out there and I can devote my focus
yeah.
on that, and it gets my mind off of whatever else pressure I've got. Every guy's got to figure out
Yeah.
what that is.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, man, but he said, gosh, I think it was some wise pastor, but it's like if you work with your mind, you should Sabbath with your hands, you know?
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, I've heard that.
And so it's just kind of like, yeah, man, like I mean, physical movement is important, you know, like
Yeah.
doing something where you're using a different part of your brain, you know,
Yes.
even learning something outside of theology, right, or ministry, right. So
Oh, yeah.
maybe it's another language, maybe it's sign language. I don't know, you
Oh,
know.
yeah. You got me reading this Natasha's dance book now, man. Learn about Russian history. Thank you for
Yes,
that.
yes, man, dude. Yeah, what a wild culture that is, man. So yeah, dude. So um, yeah, do something physical, man. Do something with your hands. There's a pastor I talked with I will say a month ago. I can't remember the term. You would probably understand know it, but like his yard is on a corner lot, and he wanted to put he wanted to like move the dirt up off of the curb and then put rocks
Mm,
to kind of lift it up. You know what I'm
okay.
saying?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I don't know what it's called, but in doing that, he ended up sleeping better.
Wow.
Um, his mind was clearer, and when he
Yeah.
finished it, he actually ended up, um, getting a membership to a gym just so he can
Mm.
maintain physical movement. And he actually got to talk with the neighbors that he's been next to for 10 years because they came out and they were kind of like, "What are you doing?" and all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of cool.
It is. It is. Well, let's circle around now. So we've evaluated. Don't make decisions when you're at your lowest.
Yeah.
You've got to have a reset. You need to take a moment where you're restoring whatever your physical or emotional capacity is.
Uh-huh.
And then, if you keep walking through that passage with Elijah, God didn't let him off. He affirmed his calling,
Uh-huh.
and then he went back and he was able to return to what he knew, not what he felt.
That's
God
right.
said, You got to go back. And I think sometimes we're in a feelings culture, and
Mm,
that's not always wrong, but
right.
feelings are not always accurate.
Nope.
When
Nope.
I was in my moment of difficulty and I wasn't sure this was my calling, I had to do these things. But then I always went back to, I remember that semester, sophomore year in college, where I wrestled with this entire sense of calling and I knew how that ended up. That was a fact.
Uh-huh.
It was a fact. This is what happened. This is what God told me to do. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. It wasn't how I felt about it. It was, that's what I was called to do. Our feelings can come up and down, but our calling is going to be a calling, and God has called us to follow Him. And maybe that's in the pastorate, and as years go by, it transitions to something else. That's what happened to me, but my calling is still the same, and I need
Yeah.
to understand that. There's a moment where every one of us that's listening, we knew clearly what God was asking us to do, and just
Mm.
because it is not clear now doesn't mean it's changed.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Dude, I mean, I co-sign that. I stack hands. I don't have anything. I mean, I'm right there, man. I mean, I think the only thing I would add is, you don't want to make you don't want to make a decision when you're triggered emotionally.
Right,
I think you need to, and this is maybe where coaching comes in. You need somebody, if it can't be you, or if you can't get out of your own head, you need somebody else
right.
to ask, hey, let's get specific. Like, what triggered
Hmm.
this? What led to it, right? And I think you just have to
Yes.
get specific, man. Is it criticism? Is it lack of results? Is it family issues? Is it conflict in the church? I found a lot of times it's just conflict in the church, man. And it gets
Yeah.
personal. Um, and I think, once you name it, I think then you can kind of address it and kind of game plan around that. But yeah, don't let it mess with your calling, man. Like,
Yeah. You brought it up. Find a coach.
yeah,
Those are not always cheap or free, but you need to find a coach that may
yeah,
just be a session or two to help you process what's going on. I do that for guys. I know you do
yep,
that for guys.
yep,
That's a part of what we do at our jobs right now.
uh-huh,
But for my age and older, this is gonna be they will push back on this next statement, but you might need to find a therapist that
yeah,
can walk you through what it is that you're going through right now, because they may see stuff psychologically or emotionally that you have to process. And it's
yeah,
not all Freudian and it's all about your mom. It's not always that. It's just, let me walk you through that. Sometimes a coach can do that. Sometimes you need a counselor or a therapist to help you through that. Maybe you need to get, a 4 session package and go, I need to see you every week for 4 weeks until I walk through that. I don't know.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
No, dude, I think it's an absolute necessity. Like, I mean, I really do. I think there are times we can be too quick to go toward a therapist, on some things, but there's just some things that, I won't even touch as a pastor. I will refer somebody to a therapist, right?
Oh,
Obviously,
sure.
help and everything like that. But I think you got to have somebody, um, that's going to at least ask the question of, hey, are you trying to leave this church because you feel called or because you're actually just wounded? You know,
Right.
like, um, and a lot of times when you're hurt and wounded, burnt out, crashed out, whatever, you're probably not going to ask that question, man. You know,
Mm-mm.
um, like, and from experience, I actually feel like, um, if you can weather the storm and get through it, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a pleasant, you know, scene on the other side of that, you know. It could be a
Absolutely.
pleasant season of ministry, if you make it through. Um, but yeah. Do you feel like the first 2, 3 years is gonna be the toughest, or is it like year 3 to 5, and then after that, it's gonna be a little easier?
I think it's year 3 to 5, somewhere in year 3 to 5,
Mhm.
that you're going to face this level of issue, because you know, maybe you've run out of your sermons, so to
Mm,
speak, you know,
mm,
and well, now what do I need to do? And now the hard work, the grind happens. Okay, I've got to really seek the Lord, as if you shouldn't have been already, but
yeah,
we get into
right.
those moments, or all of our bag of tricks we've already done, and now what am I supposed to do? I got to come up with new stuff.
Mm,
And maybe it's, and I think we get into that, going back to the West, we get into this level of something has to be new every season, new every year. Why? It doesn't have to be new every year.
mm,
We just need to continue to do what we're doing. But I think year 3 to 5 is where it hits. And that season on the backside, if you could, like you said, if you can weather that storm,
Yeah.
you have usually you have a good season of ministry after that.
Yeah.
I was in
Yeah.
year I was in year 4 to 5 at one church that it was the deacons told me. They told me and said, "Hey, look, I think it's time that you look for someplace else to be."
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, that's fine, but I can't do that like in 6 weeks. You got to give me time to get that done."
Right.
And and I said, "I'll honor that request. That's fine, but I'm not going to stop ministering here." And they didn't want me to. It's so funny because the next 2.5 years
Yeah.
were the most fruitful in that
That's
8-year stretch.
that's awesome.
And God finally, released us and let us go. And I
And
often wonder how many of those deacons are like, is this guy ever going to leave? But it was some of the most fruitful time. And it was just, but so to your point, I think there is
yeah.
a fruitful time on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm, that's good.
Every leader faces moments of doubt. It doesn't mean you failed, and it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that you miss God. It just means you live in the pressure cooker that is the church. Um, so just slow down, rest, eat a good steak, whatever you need to do, and just re-anchor in what you already know that God's called you to do. Well, thank you for spending a few moments with us today. If this episode was helpful, share it with another leader that may be walking through this season in their own life. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the Church Brain, and you'll get the leadership briefings on Mondays, these podcasts on Thursdays, and I've added a leader note on Fridays, just kind of a little end of the week sweet treat for you. So remember, God is steady even when you feel uncertain. Until next time, keep going.